What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode of the show, we've got a special guest, another member of the Keri Shull Team that sold over 1,100 homes in the D.C. area and Florida in 2021. Repeat guest on the show. Welcome, Peter, known as the Lead Eater.
Welcome. Yeah, glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Peter. Peter Applegate, by the way. Peter the Lead Eater is just a inside joke about an inside sales agent, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Peter was on, you were on episode 190. We talked about making the transition from inside sales to outside sales. So, inside sales, for those of you who don't know, that is what we call the people that follow up with the leads, make the outbound and inbound phone calls, and book leads for the listing agents, for the buyer's agents. You succeeded in that role for many years, and then made the transition to outside sales, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So on this episode, we're talking about transitioning from outside sales to inside sales.
Bringing it back, yeah. So I've been with the team for coming up on 6 years now. Most of that time as an ISA. And, I decided the grass is always greener on the other side, went over there and, realized I liked where I was at a little better. So,
well, it's two different job types for sure, two different personalities. My take on it real quick, then I'll get yours. Is that your inside sales agent is someone that is good at follow-up, good at predictability, like they have no problem coming in, calling for an hour, taking a little break, calling for another hour, right? Repeating this 3, 4, or 5 hours a day of calling people and getting them over that initial objection of meeting with someone to buy or sell a home.
Right. And it's different in a lot of ways, versus being like a solo agent, because as a solo agent, I didn't really have an issue with calling. I mean, I had a heavy background in it. But it's different. One thing I've noticed just from observing the industry in general is a lot of agents don't even take that step. Like, if they're calling a lead, they're just like, okay, what are you looking for? Cool, I'll email you some stuff and let me know if you want to see something. Right? And our team just has a totally different approach. It's like we're getting in front of that person, and if we're not spending a whole lot of time working on their behalf otherwise.
Yeah, a lot of agents struggle, who are good agents, by the way, they struggle with being an inside sales agent for themselves, right? Like, they don't have the time, the discipline, the routine, right, to just get on the phones and call back people, follow up, actually overcome objections and get them to come in for an appointment, right, or to meet with them. Whereas they're good at holding the client's hand through the buying and selling process, which is, in the residential side at least, is just as much a emotional transaction,
right,
more so than the financial side in many cases, right? Like, they're good at that. But there's definitely a sacrifice, right? A lot of times, especially when you're starting out and you haven't built up a team, you're giving up your nights, you're giving up your weekends. You're responding to offers or responding to new listings, right? You lose some control of your schedule. So while I think the upside on the financial side is greater for an OSA, several $100,000, ISAs can get into the six figures, low six figures, maybe more for some, but definitely on the agent side you're going to make more money, but you pay a price for that, right? So as an ISA, you have more predictability on your schedule.
Yeah, I describe it as a higher floor and a lower ceiling. So, you're guaranteed a first-year ISA on our team, assuming you work all 12 months. You're guaranteed $28,000. That's assuming you bring this company zero business. Like,
which isn't
the worst ISA. No one does that.
Won't happen.
If you're bringing in zero business, you won't be here 12 months. Frankly, but yeah. So it's like it's guaranteed. Like, every month you're gonna get that $2K, or it's a little more. We bump it up a little higher at first, but around $2K, it's like the top ramen budget. Like, you'll get your rent, you can probably pay your car insurance, maybe a car note. It's not going to be much left otherwise, but you'll be all right. which is something you don't have as an agent. Like you might have weeks, months where you make 20, 30,000. You have months where you make zero. Or well, you might. It's definitely an option anyway, depending on how consistent you are with your business. I mean, the biggest thing that I wasn't surprised for, because I knew a lot of that going in, was the psychological and the emotional side of it. Really is dealing with people's emotions, and that it is such an emotional experience. And something I came to find out is I actually prefer working with investors, because that's much less the case in those situations. It really is just, do these numbers make sense? And if so, we're moving forward. If they don't, we're not.
I agree that for most people, the residential transaction is an emotional decision. That takes a certain type of personality, right? Getting on the phone like an ISA does every day, that takes a certain type of personality. They're different. There's probably some people that excel at both, but most probably fall into one of the two categories. So obviously, the first time we were talking about transitioning from inside sales to outside sales, now the other way around. So what, for you, was challenging or that you didn't like about being an agent that, now you're happier back in the ISA role again?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple things. One of the biggest challenges for me was controlling my facial expressions. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say. But just being on the phone, people say some ridiculous things to you sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, totally. And my voice doesn't give it away, but if you're looking at my face, you can tell I think they're full of shit or just batshit crazy. And that's something I had to become more aware of. That's when I'm listening to these people in person. It's like
turn the Zoom camera off.
They can see that. So being aware of that, and then just kind of like the randomest things. Like, I'm trying to think of some examples of like the littlest things that like caused me to not get a commission right there. Like they didn't want to deal with the hassle of repainting. It's like, it's maybe $500 to $1,000 and a weekend, some pizza and beer with your friends. Like, it's not a big deal, but
right,
especially at those lower price points, like if the house isn't perfect, overcoming that challenge. And it's more psychological than it is financial. You could break it down that it's not a significant difference. Like paying $5,000 over asking price brings your payments up about $25 a month, cost you maybe an extra $500 to $1,000 up front, which is not nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. But there are some people where it's just like a psychological thing. They grew up in some other market, and their parents were like, oh, no, you can't go over asking price. It's already ridiculous that you're paying $300,000 for a one-bedroom condo when we got our house for less than that. So it's just more those barriers. And I found sometimes I had clients who were willing to spend more money on a property as long as they were getting it below the asking price. And it didn't matter the value there. Like there was a deal that was $320, and $320 was a great price. They didn't want to pay $320, but there was one that's $330, very similar, and they were willing to pay $320 for that because it's $10K under asking. And just like the illogical things in this, really truly realizing how illogical people can be, and that people don't make these decisions from a rational standpoint all the time. And a lot of times they don't realize how irrational their decision making is.
And that is a hard process for a lot of people. It takes a certain type of personality to get through that repeatedly, right? Plus you lose control of your time. So what do you in particular enjoy now about being back in the ISA role?
I'm really good at it. So that helps. But the structure of it, and that was probably what I struggled with a lot as an agent, was the lack of structure. Like I'd stick to doing my time block. I get probably like 5-10 hours a week of calls in still, but like, what am I doing other than my time? There's like appointments that are getting scheduled by our ISAs. There's appointments that I'm booking myself. There's showings and things like that. But how are you filling that time and using it well? Like, I had a lot of free time that I was utilizing poorly, both for my business and just for my personal life. Like, I'd look at my schedule and be like, I have a lot of time to do things, but it's just so disorganized and so scattered in its need to constantly be available, because your clients will hit you up outside of business hours. They will go want to see something last minute. And that's the real nice thing about this position, is like, I very rarely respond to things after I go home. Like, I might respond to an email or a text, but it's not critical like it is in that other role, in the agent role.
Yeah, so I think it really is two different personality types for most people. That being said, every agent needs to be good at being an ISA, and
Sure.
to some degree, right? So for the agents out there that are solo agents, small teams, maybe they don't have an ISA, or maybe they are still in an ISA role. Like maybe they have an ISA, but they're still doing calls, prospecting. What would your advice to them be onto how to get better at booking appointments on the phone for themselves or for their team? If they're a small team owner.
So, it's different if you're booking it for yourself or if you're booking it for somebody else. And I think it's tremendously easier to book it for someone else. And the reason for that is that you could dodge questions better. Like, no, it is. Like, if somebody, either they want to talk to you or they don't, and some of the people that do, they're like, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you, but, like, we're talking right now. And someone will ask me a technical question. I'll be like, wow, that's such a great question. I'd love to set up some time for you to meet with, my agent, Erin Johnson. She's very familiar with that process. She'll be able to go over all that situation. So I'm not giving an answer to that question, right? And it's because I'm not the best person to answer it. But if I'm booking it for myself, it's like, I can totally answer that question in detail, but let's do it another time. It's just a little bit awkward. So I guess the best way to overcome that if you're booking it for yourself is to find a reason for the meeting. And you can get creative with what's that going to be. The biggest one that I go for is that we have a ton of off-market inventory, and I found that it's a bit easier. I can't just email them out to you because it's proprietary information, but I'd love to sit down with you. We can go over it together, or we can jump on a Zoom call and go over it, and that way I could actually we can go over and look at these properties together, and I'd be better able to understand your thoughts that way.
What about the importance of being able to talk to both decision makers at the same time? Obviously, not everyone who buys a home or sells a home is doing it as a couple, but many are. And I doubt when they're calling in or filling out a web form, they're like both there on the phone at the same time. Right?
Occasionally you'll get them, but yeah, most of the time no.
So, how would you approach that on a phone call if you knew it was one person calling in but buying for a couple or whatnot?
A lot of times you don't realize it right away, right?
So I think that would be another good reason to actually set up a scheduled time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is, and that could work too. If there's other decision makers involved, just being like, there's a few questions you could ask, and depending on the answers you get, you might pigeonhole yourself into a situation where you're not. A good one is, is there anybody else whose input would be important in this decision? Or, and if they're like, no, my husband will go with whatever I pick. Like, literally, as long as it's in the budget, we're good. That one's tough. But most of the time, it's not a good challenge because they understand the importance of that. Right. It is a big choice, and they do need to all be involved. A lot of times, though, you'll end up setting the appointment, and you'll get the time locked down, and then it's kind of like we call them by-the-way questions. And so there's a few of them. It's like lender pre-approval. But then it's like, hey, yeah, so, is there anybody else who's going to be involved in this process? Yes or no? Are they available at that time? And then if no, we're not sure, be like, okay, well, we can set it up, talk to them. We definitely want everybody to be involved. And if that doesn't work, we can figure out a different time. Or if they're not going to be available, we just change the time right there.
Yeah, so I think that's another good approach to take to lock down that appointment if you're trying to book for yourself. I think another one, too, is to ask them if they've done a real estate deal before, right? Because maybe they've already done one, so they think they don't need to meet with you initially, or that it's not that important. And I think it's important to explain to them that, look, you may have bought a house 10 years ago, but that was a different market. The loan regulations were different. This might have been your experience with the agent back then, but it's different now, and I can explain all of these reasons at our meeting. Right. So is that something you try to probe as well, just to?
Absolutely. I typically ask the first-time homebuyer question before we get to the meeting.
Sure.
Because a lot of times that's a great hook for people that, like most buyers, especially first-time homebuyers, they're not ready till they're ready. Like, people go from being 6 to 12 months out to buying a house today.
Right. And I think that's a comfortable zone if you ask what time, 6 to 12 months. Well, that's far enough out that I don't have to do anything right now, but it's not so far out that I can't imagine it not happening. Right? So I think people like to kind of stay in that 6 to 12 month zone.
It's
right?
safe.
So
It's
be
safe.
skeptical.
You don't have to make a decision.
Right?
You don't have to
they
make
could
a
buy
commitment.
like right now if they say 6 to 12 months.
Right. And the way
and as an ISA, you have to uncover that.
Yeah, and well, I mean, even because we're always trying to get them sooner, right? Because it's always like, well, what if you saw the right property? But before you even get to that, it's like, I know you're not ready to buy a house today, which is why it's a great time to meet. So we could just go and educate you on this entire process. So that way, when you do see the perfect home, you're not in a rush trying to get all these things in order. You'll already have everything lined up. So when the opportunity comes up, and I understand it's no rush, you'll be able to act quickly. And so like that's a great thing for meeting, because if somebody's not, our biggest hook is we have access to homes you can't see online. If somebody's not ready to act, that's way less valuable, right? Because they're not missing out because they didn't see it. They're missing out because they're not ready. So it's just showing them the benefit of getting prepared early and being prepared.
How many hours a day are you typically calling, as an ISA?
It really depends. So we do like one-off calls and we do dial sessions. And so dial sessions, we're using the Mojo 3-line dialer, 3 at a time. We probably do 10 to 12 hours a week, and some days are a little heavier than others, but that averages out to about 2 hours a day. And then the rest of it is a lot of like one-off calling. So we'll get a list of like people who signed up for our seminars, and it'll be like 15 people. And so the reason we do some of those lists 1 at a time versus 3 at a time is a lot of it is either just low volume or the likelihood of them answering is really high.
Right.
When multiple people are consistently answering a 3-line dialer, you're pissing people off.
So what's the what do you think the average time calling per day that an ISA?
If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably 3.5 to 4 hours, which our ISA is working 8-hour days, so the biggest question I get is like, what do you guys do with your time?
Well, you have to organize,
yeah,
prep the calls, put the notes in, right? And like, there's been a lot of studies that say like 3 to 4 hours is kind of what people can max out on anyway. Sure. But then you need the prep time and the note time and all of that other stuff.
Yeah, too. And it's like I'm working throughout the day, but trying to articulate, I'm just at a loss sometimes. Like I promise we're working. I don't know. 3
to 4 hours is a lot of calling. My guess is the average real estate agent, on average, is probably doing like 20 minutes or less a day of calling.
Sure.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I mean, most of them probably less.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So we encourage like outside buyers agents to call, on our team when they're new, and they're allowed to continue doing that. We provide them leads to call, and a lot of times people do it for a couple weeks to maybe a couple months, depending on how their pipeline's going, depending on how good they think they are, how comfortable they are doing it. But very rarely do people do it consistently. Like we have 60 buyer agents on our team. I'd say there's probably 5 that get that much dial time in regularly.
Well, it's hard to spend the 3 to 4 hours a day that guys like you, girls like you do, build up that pipeline, and then go service it as well. Like buyer meetings, seller meetings, listing appointments, showings, offers, inspections. Agents struggle with building in even just 1 hour a day of calling, let alone 3 to 4. So if you want to really scale and build a real estate team, you're going to have to separate these roles. You're going to have to build out an ISA department. That's one of the things that Keri and I and some of the members of our team will be teaching at the HyperFast Summit in Boca Raton, Florida, February 1st and 2nd. We're going to show you step by step how to develop an ISA program, how to get other people booking appointments for your agents so that they can do more deals. If you want to learn how to do that and really scale a business that will give you freedom of time and money, you need to get to the HyperFast Summit, Boca Raton, Florida, February 1st and 2nd. Go to hfasummit.com for ticket information. Again, that's hfasummit.com. So back to 60 agents. How many ISAs are there? Or 60 buyer agents?
Yeah, 60 buyer agents. Right now we have 9 ISAs.
Yeah, so one ISA, if you just kind of run the numbers on there, they can really generate enough appointments for like probably 8 to 10 buyer and listing agents. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, definitely.
What the numbers are playing out here. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends how many appointments you need for your agents, right? I'd say 10 to 15 appointments a week's a fair expectation. So whatever. I guess you got 99 agents. That's 90 to 110 or so, 120. I'm bad at math, but somewhere in that neighborhood. So if that, if your agents are good, need 2 appointments a week, that's 60. If they can go by with like 1.5.
Well, 8 appointments a month. Like if you're getting 2 appointments a week from an ISA, that's 8 a month. That should be enough for 3 or 4 closings on average, right? A month once you build that pipeline up. So just something to think about when you're scaling. Like you need a certain amount of ISAs for buyer and seller agents. The numbers might be different for people depending on what market they're in.
Depending on what kind of leads you're calling too. I mean, we have a pretty robust marketing department. We're not cheap on generating leads. So, I mean, if you're calling, just straight cold calling expireds, FESBO, circle prospect, and those lead sources all work, but just tailor down your expectations for how many appointments your conversion rate will be lower on those leads, because especially circle prospecting, they just live in a neighborhood. Like FESBOs and expired, those people are all motivated. They're all interested. Circle prospecting, like you're calling somebody who bought a house 2 months ago. Like they don't want to move. They have no interest. Which apparently is a level of interest debatable. I don't know.
Are you referencing the Grant Cardone?
And
Jordan Belfort when Cardone was on Belfort's Wolf Den or whatever that podcast is, and Cardone said not interested is a level of interest.
I mean, I agree. I guess it's just a very low level, I suppose.
Yeah. He's a fascinating guy, Grant. We had him on, I believe it was episode number 2, if you want to go back in the archives and check that one out. And then we also had him speak at the HyperFast Summit, so the first one. But yeah, that was an interesting point. And I guess with the, a neighbor that bought 2 months ago is not going to move for like 3, 4, 5 years, they might know someone that needs to buy or sell, right? So that's another thing. Like if the phone call doesn't lead to an appointment, you can ask for a referral, right?
Right.
And does that happen for you? Or
it does. And again, I mean, more often than not, it doesn't, but it does sometimes. And I mean, that kind of reminded to something in your book, like gatekeepers, right, and the importance of that. So, that's kind of the way I look at it too. And again, occasionally you'll get those opportunities where, they're not moving, sweet old lady, but she knows everybody in that neighborhood. She can tell you, oh yeah, the Joneses, they might be selling, they're going through a divorce, or like, and all of a sudden they'll give you all the gossip. And that's the tough thing when you're doing these calls, is sometimes you just have to let people talk about things that aren't pertaining to what you're trying to do. And that's how you make those connections, because a lot of times it's like trying to determine quickly, is this person willing, ready, and able to buy a house? Yes, no. If no, get off the phone. Sometimes letting them talk a little bit, can lead you somewhere. Sometimes it doesn't. But again, if you're doing a lot of that cold prospecting, sometimes it's nice to have somebody talk to you without cussing you out for 10 minutes. So like, just let it go and, see where it takes you. Yeah,
the concept of gatekeepers works really well. I did talk about that in my book, The Hyperlocal, HyperFast Agent. It's a story about how I sold $22.5 million in my first year in the business. We actually are still giving out free copies of those to people. If you want to go to hyperfastfreebook.com, again, that's hyperfastfreebook.com, and we'll send you a free copy. You just got to pay for the shipping. hyperfastfreebook.com. So let's talk a little bit about the different buckets of leads that you call and the strategies you use, and how they're different. So just, I guess, name me like your top 3 lead sources personally that you like calling, and how they kind of differ from each other.
Sure. So like Zillow and Realtor.com, and I lump them together for the most part. So there's like that, and then we're about to start doing something called tear down letters. So I'm really excited to bring that back. But those are like letters to small properties, small old homes on buildable lots, marketing to builders that way. Open houses is a good one. It's like with a lot of those, or at least the two of them, right? The two buyer ones, Open House and Zillow, Realtor.com. There's a high level of intent and interest, and those are the easiest ones, or the ones I enjoy the most, because most of the time they do want something. It's just convincing them to work with us,
right?
Versus people are just convincing them, do they want this at all, and then to work with us.
Which that would, so you're just, like, they're not going on Zillow for fun, right?
Yeah,
they want information.
They want
about
information,
home, right?
Right.
You just have to convince them you're the right person,
right? And a lot of times it can be challenging because a lot of people are ignorant to the business. They don't understand how it works. They don't understand how those companies make their money,
right?
And a lot of times they're pissed off. They're not talking to a listing agent. Be like, oh, is that your property? No, like, so why are we talking right now? And just kind of educating them on that. And I'm
guessing those people, the off-market strategy works pretty well because they're looking for something. But if you tell them, like, yeah, I may have what you need, but you may not be able to find it on Zillow, well, now they've got a reason to talk.
Right. And, yeah, there are a series of rebuttals you can use in that situation to just kind of establish yourself, or position yourself, I guess, rather, as the best person to help them. And so a lot of times it's like, yeah, for that particular property, we're not. A lot of times Realtor.com will, connect you with top agents in the areas you're interested in. So I think that's why we got connected today. Are you mostly just looking for properties in, get as specific as you can in Roslyn, in Arlington County, and wherever. And then you just go through, you get the timing and motivation. And if they say they're ready to buy something or act fairly soon, the way you could phrase it is like, okay, and do you mostly browse on Zillow, and or how else do you find properties? And that's a roundabout way of asking if they're working with an agent. But if they say, yeah, we mostly work on Zillow, it's great. Like, wow, about 30% of our listings actually sell without ever being on Zillow. Would you be interested in talking about that? And a lot of times you can it's funny because sometimes people want to talk to a listing agent and then they have no specific questions about the listing or nothing that I can't answer.
Right.
Without ever having seen the home. And a lot of times, so it's that. Sometimes it's they want to talk to a listing agent because they feel they know the property best. Other times they want to talk to a listing agent because they don't want representation and they think that's going to save them money by not having that. So they're trying to cut you out because they view you as a middleman. Which, to be fair, I guess you kind of are, but your middleman is negotiating for their interest.
Now, what's the difference between, convincing this Zillow Realtor person who is interested in a home, convincing them that you're the one to do it? Difference between that person and the open house?
The open house, they're more likely to have an agent they're working with.
Okay.
And a lot of times... So it's awkward because they've already had a conversation with our team most of the time, right? They spoke to whoever it was at the open house. So a lot of times they'll tell them something like, I have an agent, or I'm just looking, I'm not ready to do anything. They'll give you whatever that initial rebuttal is. So then we call, and they're sometimes a little frustrated that wasn't communicated, that they're not interested, they don't want to talk to us in whatever fashion they sent it. They were probably more polite about it than that, but that's the long and short of it. So it's just kind of overcoming that. And I just try to pivot to asking them about the house. And the whole point of that is like, I'm listening. I hear if they like it, if they don't like it, what they dislike. But it's really just to get them talking about something that isn't, why are you calling me?
Right. You're trying to find out, did they like that house? Are they really serious? What's motivating them? What do they want? And then I assume once you figure all of that out, you're able to position yourself, the team, as being able to solve that need, if applicable. Definitely,
yeah. And the way I view it as a reason for calling. Like, the reason for calling is to book an appointment and generate business, right? But that doesn't go over well when you tell them that. So, yeah, the reason I was calling you to stop by our open house, I just wanted to follow up with you. Just very open-ended, and just kind of get them talking about that. Because people like to talk about themselves. You let them talk for a bit and be like, okay, so you didn't like that house. Got it. So, if you found a home with that open concept in the main level master in that same neighborhood, is that something you'd want to move forward with? Great. We'd sell a ton of properties. We can get you out. It all comes back to our off-market close, like 95% of the time.
Last kind of question on these different lead types. So the other bucket you mentioned was these teardown letters that we're starting up. We did these a while ago. We're bringing it back. You're sending out a letter in a neighborhood that's established, right? But there's older homes that are getting knocked down. You're building new homes. So how do you handle these leads? These people get a letter that says a builder might be interested in buying your home. How do you handle how are these? How is this bucket different than the others, and how do you handle it?
So I mean, it's seller focused. That's the biggest difference. But they come in two different ways. They either call in response to the letter, or there's an online form they could go put in their information on, right? So if they call in, a lot of times, so we don't, and a lot of builders in our market send these out too. Depending on your market, this whole concept might not make sense. You know, if land's readily available, you're not dealing with this most likely.
You're probably not doing this in the track, communities where they're building track homes, like 300, unit neighborhoods. This is more likely an infill, like urban or suburban environments.
Sure. So essentially, the message in the letter is like, we have a local builder wants to buy your home. I'm trying to remember. I haven't seen it in a few years. They're able to pay cash, close in 7 days. A lot of, real similar to a pitch you get from like Home Buyers of America. Yeah, we buy ugly houses, all that. And these people, if they're getting that letter from us, they're getting it from 10 other people too, right? Like, we're not the only ones with this idea. And so the way we pitch it is like, we work with all the top builders in this market, and so what we do is we act as an acquisition agent for them. So we'd be able to come by, have one person come through, and then they'd be able to market your home to all the different builders we work with and get them to compete against themselves to give you the best possible offer for your home without having to put it on the market in a traditional sense. No showings, no open houses. We just need to come by one time, look at it, and...
Yeah, I think that's a great benefit to offer them and reason for them to talk to us, vice a builder or a wholesaler. I think the other reason, too, is a lot of these homes, people have updated them or kept them up or they're not on a buildable lot, or there's something that would make them not as good as a candidate to necessarily tear down, but maybe better as a candidate to put some, or in some cases no work into and list and sell, and maybe that gets them more money. Now, not everyone's looking for that. Some people might just want the quick guaranteed cash sale because they're just emotionally or financially or whatever reason done with the house. But if they go directly to a builder or wholesaler, they're not going to get the option of choosing from a menu of options that we can offer.
Sure. And I mean, talking them out of a wholesaler is real easy to do because the only way the wholesaler makes money is if you sell the property for less than you should, right? There's no profit for them otherwise. But they could shop around. They got nothing but time. They could hear 20 different people's offers and do it that way. That's actually a really common rebuttal that we get, though, is, maybe they don't need to tear it down. Or actually, that's what we use as a rebuttal because some of these folks, they're interested, but they're like, my house looks like shit. It's awful. Like, you can say, hey, maybe we could renovate. No, you need to tear it down. It's awful. Trust me. Like, how big the lot is, right? Like, why do you need to come meet with me? Just, if you want to make an offer, let's make an offer. Let's do it. And then exactly what we say is what you said. It's like, a lot of times maybe we can renovate or use some of the existing structure. And a lot of times in that situation, the builder's cost is lower, so they're able to offer you more money. So by taking a look at your home, even though it is probably likely for a tear down based on what you're telling me, we'd love to just explore all options and make sure we're getting you as much money as possible for the home.
Well, Peter, it's great to have you back in the ISA role. Great to have you back on the show. I think it's clear if you're listening, watching this, that the importance of an inside sales agent if you really want to scale your business. I think it should be the first or second hire you make, and then I think you're going to need one ISA for every 6 to 10, somewhere in there, agents that you bring on. And again, we are teaching this concept at the HyperFast Summit in Boca Raton, Florida, February 1st and 2nd. You can go to hfasummit.com for more information. Peter, I always like to end with the HyperFast round if you're ready for some rapid-fire questions.
Let's do it.
What's your biggest piece of advice to a new agent?
Have some money saved before you start.
What's a mistake you see seasoned agents commonly make?
Prejudging leads, like making a snap determination about someone with limited information.
That's a good one. What's the biggest challenge you've ever had in real estate? How'd you overcome it?
Biggest challenge I ever had in real estate. getting through the lows, right? It's an emotional roller coaster. It's funny. I've had some of my best months followed by some of my worst months. So it's just, I guess, getting in the headspace that the bad things are temporary and things do change, but like your future, the way I tell my team now is, you know, the work you do right now as an ISA does not at all affect your paycheck this month. Like the work you do this month affects your paycheck 3 to 6 months from now.
That's a hard concept for some people. What do you do when you're not working in real estate for fun?
Mostly snowboarding.
Yeah.
Do a lot of that.
Hopefully we got some good snow coming up. What would you say to the real estate agent, either solo or small team, that is afraid or isn't making the daily phone calls?
Hire somebody to do it for you. I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, you need to get it done.
Yeah, it needs to be done. It doesn't have to be you doing it, but it needs to be done.
All right, last question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Probably still here or living in the mountains somewhere. Maybe both. We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show again, Peter. If people want to get in touch with you, ask you real estate questions, or just connect with you on social media, what's your preference there?
I mean, you could join the Inner Circle. You can find me on Instagram at Pete Applegate. And, yeah, that's pretty much it for social media.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show today. To all of our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. Please leave us some feedback, comments. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, and share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from seeing it or listening to it. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the HyperFast Show. Subscribe to us if you want to make sure you get the latest and greatest HyperFast shows. And remember, we love reviews. Reviews help us bring better and better guests and improve our shows. So give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you want to see more, click right here. And if you want 100 real estate tips from my best-selling book, click right here to download them instantly. And if you're new to this channel, click below to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out. And leave some comments about what you think on the videos.